What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Gotta Get Back, the Samurai Jack and Review Show. Welcome to episode 18, guys. We continue through season 2. My name is Kyle, your host. If you haven't seen the show before, guys, we're doing a quick recap of each episode of Samurai Jack. We're doing a favorite scene, a favorite character, a score, and some Easter eggs, maybe, if there are any for the episode. So here we go, guys, kicking it off with episode 18. This was a fun one. And last week's episode was kind of meh. It was okay, but again, dude, usually when there's a bad or okay episode of Samurai Jack, it bounces back. So shout out to Gendy. So this one starts out, we see like some machinery in the very opening there. We're not really sure what's going on. But then Jack is kind of going through a land of destruction. So he stumbles upon like a little cat village, and it's actually kind of funny because they all have like, the buildings are all like these big like the cat things that where the cats go in and out of, like little circles, where it's like the cat houses. I don't know what they're called, just essentially, but but basically this like dying cat tells him like, there's so much destruction, they came out of nowhere, and there's like a flashback, and there's like a machine going through, and there's like bullets being loaded through a machine gun, and there's claws, and we get like glimpses of what's happening here. They went just as quickly as they came, and it was just total destruction. We had no chance. We tried to fight back. This ends up being like the next story, because Jack eventually comes on to the next town, and this is like a town of robots here, and this is kind of messed up because all the robots are like hung up on stakes. And there's, again, one dying robot who's like barely hanging on, and he's like, we tried to defend ourselves, and it's like flashback to the robot city. There's like a robot that shoots out like little grenades. They look like snake things basically, but it's like grenades. They're like these little like guard robots that are going over there. But we get a first glimpse of like the robots that have like a basket on their head. And they have the red eyes there. And this is where we see like the robot that can go invisible, but the footprints are still showing, but it is like tearing these robots limb from limb. Literally like their faces are getting punched in. So it's really violent. And they're like, yeah, we had no chance. So kind of the same story as the cat one, but again, they were gone before we even knew they were here, and everything is on fire. And then this is where we also see that one of the robots can just go on fire and just like explode with fire basically, and wipes everyone out. Literally the robots are like standing there, and they're like ripped apart with flame. So that's pretty crazy. And Jack is like, oh my God. And he's getting kind of pissed off. We cut back to like a laboratory where there's like discs being loaded and like gear spinning and things like that. We don't really know what's going on, but we do see like a scientist there. We cut back to Jack. He's walking through another village, and this one is on fire as well. Everything is destroyed. He goes up to basically another dying survivor, and he's told another story about how there's like one of the robots that throws like ninja stars, like, and just rips everyone apart. It's really cool animation of like everyone just kind of being like limb from limb dismembered there. There's one that's cut in half. So there's like a samurai sword. And it's just crazy. But Jack is sitting there, and he's like, is there no end to this madness, like this senseless destruction? The wind is kind of carrying him in a direction there. We get a really cool half shot of Jack going out to the desert. And then there's eight little baskets in a circle. It turns out that these are the ultimate robots, the ultra robots, that can like go into a little basket, and then they like expand into like the legs. So they kind of can hide in plain sight, which is why no one knew they were there, because basically they were just a bunch of baskets outside of town, and nobody thought anything of it. And then the robots are there just like that. So really smart design there, and something really cool I don't think we've seen yet. But Jack is like, your destruction ends here. And they're like, well, we've been hunting for you, Jack. He's like, what? And they're like, our mission is to destroy you. And he's like, well, come and get me. And so Jack starts fighting them. He's swinging with a sword. It does no damage. And Jack is like, oh no. He's a little worried. And they're going after him. They're trying to punch him. And he tries to swipe at their arm. Doesn't do anything. So his sword is useless now. And dude, like they're throwing the flamethrower at him. They're throwing the ninja stars at him. He's deflecting some of them, but there's so many that he can't deflect all of them. So it starts ripping like his shirt there, and he gets cuts across his arm and his chest. And he's trying to swipe with his sword, but the chain hits him across. So he gets a nice cut there. The shirt is gone. The invisible robot starts beating him up there. Jack's got no chance against these guys. Like he's just getting absolutely worked. And so then the robot that we heard about was throwing like the grenades, like the snake things, he starts throwing at those, and he starts beating them up. So he's got the bullets, the grenades, the flamethrower going at him. Jack is just like running for his life at this point. And then eventually he like takes shelter in like a destroyed building. And it turns out that the guy who created these robots, Xtor, who's like a little guy with like green goggles, lab coat, he's like, hello, it's like, I just want to tell you like what happened and why these guys are like what happened, or like the origin basically. And he's like, well, Jack, he's like, I can tell you how to beat them because I'm the one who invented them. And Jack's like, what? And he's like, yep. Aku asked me to create these robots. He's like, I studied you. We get a flashback here, and he's like, I studied your techniques for so long. This is like the Android saga in DBZ, so this was cool. But he's like, yeah, I created these 8 robots here, and he's like, they're powered by Aku. So it's like pure evil, where Aku literally like puts his fingers in the top of their heads and like pumps like looks like oil into them, but it's just pure evil energy. And once again, Aku changes his mind and he's like, thank you for building these. He's like, no, I need to test out the power by destroying your village. And he's like, what? We had an agreement. And he's like, I've changed my mind. And I'm like, dude, everyone should know not to trust Aku at this point. But basically, this is what why the scientist wants to help Jack, because he's like, yeah, Aku betrayed me and he destroyed my entire town. He's like, I had to watch as everything went to ruins. And Jack is like, oh, man. But he's like, you know what? I'm going to help you defeat them. And he's like, I'm sorry, I can't. Like, Aku has finally won. I tried and my sword does nothing. And he's like, actually, he's like, your sword can defeat it. He's like, I designed it not to, but he's like, I've also made something else. And he's like, here. And he has like a big like metal arm. And he's like, no, here, you need the power gauntlet. And he's like, this is going to make you so strong that you can cut through anything. And so Jack puts it on and he looks really cool. He's got like a cyborg right arm. And we get the half shot there. It's Jack's eyes, and he goes over to fight the robots again. And they're like, oh, an adjustment to your chassis is not going to help you in this fight. And he's like, oh, yeah? You think so, dude? And now he's like, go in there, and he's running, and he's dodging out the different attacks. And then Jack just starts slicing them up. And the robots are like, oh, shit, didn't expect this. And so it's cool. It's like the Aku BLs where he's slicing, and they start spewing like the oil or the evil energy. And so now Jack has a better chance, and he's like running. They're still shooting like the flamethrower and the guns at him. The grenades are coming at him, but Jack knows how to dodge them now. And he slowly but surely is taking them out one by one, where he goes to like the one that's shooting the grenades. He gets close enough and then he just stabs it right through like the belly there. There's like one that's targeting through the smoke, and he's got Jack like locked on. So he starts shooting through the smoke there. Well, it turns out that Jack switched that with a robot. And so he shoots the one with the machine guns, and then Jack slices him up. And this is one of my favorite shots, where he slices off the arm, and there's like a slow-mo shot where it's still firing in the air. And then he turns his sword around and stabs it in the stomach, and then uses the machine guns before slicing it twice, once in the belly, once in the neck, and then once down the face. So that was really cool. And then he's fighting against the guy with the robot with the razors and the super arm, and the arm goes to punch him, and then Jack's like, you know what? And he uses his arm, and it just like crushes through the robot. The robot's like, oh shit. But then he goes invisible. Jack is like, oh, this arm is not going to help me with that, dude. So Jack sees the footprints, and then he's fighting the robot with the razor, and he actually destroys that so that the oil spills, and it spills on the invisible robot, so then you can see him. Then he cuts him up there. But it turns out that the battery on his arm dies. And so the scientist is like, oh no, the battery's drained and there's one left. And so Jack tries to fight him. There's a really cool like half shot where he goes and he's just swinging like over and over, and the robot's countering everything. And Jack's out of breath, and he's like, Samurai, you have no chance against me. He gets knocked down, and Jack puts his sword in the ground. And this is super cool because he kind of prays to the sword, and he goes, no, I do have a chance. And he goes, this is a magic sword. He's like, the power of my ancestors is in this sword. And he says, please trust me to vanquish this evil. I am doing the right thing, or whatever. He does this whole speech, and the scientist is like, Jack. And he's like looking at him, and the last robot like raises his sword like he's going to strike Jack down. At the last moment, the clouds cut up, and we see like a forge in the clouds there. And there's like this great blue light that shines down and illuminates the sword. And it's like the power of his ancestors. And the sword is super powerful now. So he swipes down, he cuts through the sword. And it's this shot here behind me, cuts him right down the middle. Awesome shot of Jack like screaming. And then the robot falls in half and blows up. Awesome sequence there. And then the Jack is like standing, looks like a badass dude. He's like no shirt on. He's got scars all over him, and he's standing there like in victory pose, basically. And then the evil blotches from Aku, they like all separate from the robots, and they like go together, and it looks like they're escaping, and they're gonna like form a super being. And Jack sees that, and he runs after it, and he just jumps and like puts his sword right in there. And that's when Aku feels it, and he's like, "Ah, the sword!" And then X-Tor comes over, and he goes, "High five." And I didn't touch on this earlier, but he tried to do a high five earlier with Jack, and he's like, "I don't know what that is." And he's like, "Never mind." So it's really good that at the end he goes high five, and Jack goes, "You know what? I will high five you." And that is how this episode ends. Okay, guys, so the magic sword for this one, it's actually going to go to X-Tor, because he not only tells Jack, it's a cool like origin story. He tells him like, "Hey, I actually work to study your battle techniques to destroy you, but then Aku screwed me over." But then he actually helps right his wrong. So he's like, "Hey, by the way, I may have created some robots hell-bent on your destruction, but there's a silver lining. Here's a gauntlet, the power gauntlet. This is going to help you destroy them, and I'll get some revenge on Aku." So X-Tor, even though he is the kind of the original enemy, he's manipulated by Aku again, and so he helps him Jack get out of it. And I just thought he was an interesting little character there. And so as much as I wanted to give it to Jack for using his magic sword at its full potential, I'm going to give it to X-Tor for this one. With that being said, guys, a portal in time for me, it's the shot behind me here. It's when Jack gets the power of his ancestors and uses the supercharged sword to take down the last, what we thought was unstoppable robot after he loses the power gauntlet. We're assuming that took X-Tor like a long time to make, so he couldn't just like whip another one up there, and Jack was going to face his doom. So super cool. I love that like the ancestor power came down and then like forging the weapon and then it's shooting down from the heavens. That was really cool and made for an awesome shot. The light comes down and it's like this bright white light. Kind of reminded me of like Kingdom Hearts there. So that was really cool, and I think easily my portal in time for this week. For a score, guys, this is a strong episode. It's action packed. It's got some good stuff. I liked how the robots tell Jack that like they destroyed those towns so that they could get his attention, so that they could draw him out. That was really clever, I thought. We've seen Aku manipulate so many different people, but now he's manipulating like scientists to build things. So it's cool that we kind of get deeper into that. But yeah, the Jack stuff, him fighting, realizing his sword is useless, which we have not seen really at all. And then kind of like bouncing back with the gauntlet. And then the gauntlet dying was a great twist. And then him being like, "Oh, really? I have the ancestral power in my sword, and that's how we're going to take it out." So that was like a Super Saiyan moment for him. Yeah, that was all really cool. I thought the action looked good. I liked how they visited different species, and it was just awesome. So I'm going to give it a 9.3. Strong, action-packed episode. I thought that was original enough, and I liked how there was some motivation behind the attacks, and I like how X-Tor kind of swapped sides there, like was a double agent, and now obviously he's going to be an ally for Jack, so that might come back down the line. But yeah, just a solid episode overall. Okay, guys, we do have a couple of Jack facts for this week. The first one here, there's a couple of goofs, a couple of errors in this one. So the first one, when Jack finds the only surviving robot in the second village, the robot's neck is only hanging on to what's left of its body by a few wires. However, when the robot's flashback ends, its neck is completely intact. So that robot maybe did some self-repair there. The other one here, guys, the interior design of the building where Jack hides from the Ultrabots is inconsistent. So it sounds like the design changed there. There's not any more details on that, but I'm sure eagle-eyed viewers will go back and see that. So those are the two Jack facts we have for this week. Okay, guys, well, that's another episode of Got to Get Back. We are going through season 2. We're almost halfway done now through season, yeah, if I can speak, through season 2. So yeah, this was an action-packed episode. This was a good bounce back. So far we haven't had two mediocre to bad episodes in a row. So it just shows you how good the show is overall. And yeah, I'm having a good time reviewing these guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Thanks for checking out Project Potter. Go check out the other content on the channel. Like, comment, subscribe. And until next time, guys, gotta get back.